How's it going, everyone, and welcome to another installment of the All Stars Entertainment Podcast. I'm Brian, joined by
Colin, as per usual.
And today we're going to talk about the new film, John Wick 4.
John Wick Chapter 4.
Chapter 4. Don't know if it has a subtitle. Don't care. It was amazing.
I don't think it does. It doesn't need a subtitle.
It doesn't need a subtitle. I think the only one in the series that had a subtitle was Parabellum, number 3.
Yeah, which I still can't figure out why it had a subtitle, but I'm not worried about it.
Not really worried about it, not concerned about it, because today we're talking about John Wick Chapter 4.
Absolutely. Which, by the way, this film is about this concept right here. With the price on his head ever increasing, legendary hitman John Wick takes his fight against the high table global as he seeks out the most powerful players in the underworld. From New York to Paris to Japan to Berlin, this film does it all.
It does it all.
It really does. So anyways, Brian, let's start here with the screenplay written by Shay Haddon and Michael Finch.
Yes.
What'd you think of the screenplay?
I mean, I thought it was very well written. There was a lot of story in this one.
Oh, hands down.
For me, at least. Compared to the other ones, it felt like the action to story ratio wasn't as good as it has been in 3 and 1. You and I kind of agree that 2 also kind of fell into that range as well.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, it just coming off of John Wick 3, I just felt like definitely 1 and 3 had like the perfect ratio, like the 50-50 for action and story. This one felt more like maybe 60-40, yeah. And 2 was like 70-30.
Right, I think it needed to be that because this is a film that's really got a lot of story to tell. There's a lot of emotional arcs to cover with all of the characters, especially the titular character of John Wick.
Oh yeah, I mean it was definitely needed.
Yeah.
Because I know there's talks that there's going to be a 5th one, but at this current moment, this is the end of the franchise, and I know they have the spin-off of Concierge that's coming out. So, but yeah, I mean for wrapping up a series, I think it needed to be a 60-40, and John Wick always does a good job at breaking that up.
Right. And let's also mention here that Shay Haddon is also the screenwriter of John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum.
Yep.
He also did the Zack Snyder film for Netflix, Army of the Dead, alongside John Wick Chapter 4. And he is also doing the screenplay for the spin-off, as you were mentioning, Ballerina.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, those would be good. I mean, especially if you can kind of see how 3 and 4 have that similar writing style that Shay brought. And, yeah, I mean, I think it works well if you can keep the same screenwriter, same director, same cinematographer, and the same main cast for the entirety of, whether it be a trilogy or 4 movies or however.
Right, and especially I can see the fact that Shay and Michael really have this idea down for how they want to tell John Wick's. I'm going to use the term final story here because I don't know about John Wick 5 yet.
Right.
You know, it's been talked about, but nothing confirmed yet. But you definitely see the character arc of how they want to have John Wick have a redemption arc.
Right. I mean,
that really comes full circle in this movie.
Every movie, he's just really wanted to just like retire.
Yes.
So it kept that, continuity of that. So, yeah, I think, Shay and Michael brought a great, conclusion to this series.
For sure. And you know who's bringing a good conclusion to the series is the cinematographer, Dan Laussenson.
Boy, let me tell you, there was a few scenes, one scene in particular that we'll go into a little bit more, that we saw, and we were like, this is probably the best shot we've ever seen in film, at least for me personally. It was just mind-blowing how such a simple concept that he did for a scene where he shot down, where John Wick was going through all these rooms and fighting all these people. It was just a top-down shot of him going through all the rooms like you were staring down from the floor above. It was just amazing.
Oh, it was so cool. It reminded me of like those early like PlayStation 2 or Xbox games.
Yeah,
the
top-down yeah,
view.
like the early Grand Theft Auto games.
Yeah.
All of that stuff. Yeah, I agree.
And you think it wouldn't immerse you right in the action, but it totally does because you're just like, what is happening? Why is this being done from the top? And
yeah,
you just get to see all this carnage happen.
Oh, it was crazy. And he had this shotgun with dragon breath ammo, so there was fire shooting out of it, and it just looked amazing.
Shoot, man, I remember you saying like to me as the movie was playing, I now need a dragon fire breathing gun. I'm just like, absolutely.
May or may not be on my Christmas list, but yeah, no, I mean it was really. I think after that scene was done, I leaned over to you and I said, that was probably the best thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
Like, legitimately. Like, this movie is not the best movie I've ever seen. It's a great movie. It's probably top 3, maybe 4. But that shot to me is the best thing I've ever seen in my life in terms of film.
Oh, hands down. I mean, like, this is the cinematographer also did The Shape of Water from Guillermo del Toro. He also did Nightmare Alley from del Toro as well. So there's definitely a lot of experimentation that I feel Dan has done within those 2 movies alone that really carried over nicely to a lot of the sequences shot in John Wick Chapter 4. Even just that opening sequence where we have John Wick in the desert. That looks beautiful, where he's on the horse shooting out the other guys. That is amazing.
Oh, yeah. Same thing in there's always been, like, John Wick 3 and the same thing with the desert. I mean, there's always been those nice desert shots. But, yeah, I mean, I'd like to know if Dan had any influence from what we said with the top-down, action-style shooters from, like, the PS1 Nintendo days. And, because it was a really cool concept that I don't think I've never seen. I don't know if you've ever seen something like that in film, at least.
Maybe in like one of the video game spin-off franchises, like maybe Resident Evil franchise tried to do something similar, but it still didn't really pan out as well as you would hoped it would.
Right.
I'm also wondering if they tried to do this action sequence as like a steady cam almost throughout the various rooms, and I wonder if it just didn't hit and it made more sense to just film it top down.
Maybe. Whatever they did, they needed to do more of it because it was a fantastic sequence. I mean, it was probably like a 5-minute sequence.
Yeah, probably close to that by the time everything was all set and
done. It was
a
pretty lengthy sequence of just that shot, of him just going through rooms and just blowing people away with this shotgun. And it was just amazing. And you had, like, he would shoot somebody and they'd be on fire, and then he'd go to another room and the other person he shot that was on fire would stumble through. And it was just so much going on, but it was just perfectly captured in this sequence.
And again, not to harp on this video game idea, but it really kind of reminds me of, like, Super Smash Brothers franchise with all the brawl and everything like that. Even though that's not a top-down video game, but it still just reminds me of like all this carnage and all this action happening all at once.
Yeah, no, it also reminded me of like the old school Grand Theft Auto or like the GTA, like I think it was Vice City or Liberty City Stories on the Nintendo DS, where it was top-down, and you have like Resident Evil 1 and 2, which was kind of top-down. It was like a zoomed-out third person, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
And it was just crazy to see, like, this is like the games that we grew up playing, and it's like on the big screen, and it looks amazing.
Big facts. Like, it's really well put together. Like, we could sit here all day and talk about this, but we're never going to do it justice. You just got to watch it.
And then, there was obviously the sequence where they were fighting on the roundabout there in Paris.
Oh my God. That if you see that shot in the trailer where they, like, tease that,
it doesn't do it justice.
It doesn't at all.
That was a really long sequence, and the only thing I have an issue with was there was a scene where a part of the scene where the car flipped over, and it looked terrible. Like, it was probably the worst thing I've seen. Well, I've seen the new Fast and Furious, so let's walk that back. But it looked very bad, and that kind of took me out of the scene a little bit. But then, like, John Wick blew somebody away with a shotgun. I'm like, all right, I'm back. But yeah, that sequence was awesome. Yeah, I mean,
one more thing to add about that roundabout sequence is that there are so many different camera shots and different camera lengths and focal lengths, and I just really enjoy how they all put that together.
It's crazy. I mean, you think all the traffic was going one way, but the way that they shot it, you could really tell the carnage, or like the cars turning around, and it was just like, you had the people chasing John Wick driving against traffic, and it was just awesome. I mean, and it was at night, so you had like this awesome like reflections of the lights off like the road and the cars and the people and even the guns. It was so cool.
Right.
The fire looked awesome at night when there was a couple cars that caught on fire. It looked great. It was just an amazing. There's so many amazing sequences in this film in terms of cinematography. Like I think of when they're going to the chapel for the final scene. They're underneath, like, in the sewers, and they're in the boat. Like, they're in this wooden hackercraft boat in a sewer, in a water system, like a canal system. And it was just, even that was, like, so well shot. I'm like, this is crazy.
And it looks just so beautiful to behold.
Yeah.
Like, it really feels like...
It's such a simple idea. Like, just a boat in a canal under the city.
Right.
But...
Like, whoever lit that sequence knows exactly what they're doing, and they should continue doing that for just about everything that they do.
Oh, for sure. And then, obviously, you got to talk about the final sequence where there is a duel at the end, and, it was just...
Proper usage of launch shots, by the way. That's how to use a launch shot.
Yes. I think, you had the long shot of them walking, and then, you had, shots on them individually, and you went back out to a long shot. It was just amazing. Like the final shot, or what you think is the final shot, who knows, is like, wow, that long shot. You don't know what happened until they zoom in and show you what happened.
Absolutely,
it's crazy.
And I think I got to credit that also to Nathan Orloff, who edited this movie together, because he was able to really just dissect that sequence and really just splice all those images together to create a perfect narrative for that duel at the end there.
Yeah, I think Nathan and Dan, we gave a lot of credit for the cinematography, but without Nathan, I don't think the sequences are as good, because it takes a lot to edit those down. Right. And maybe the lighting wasn't as good as we think it is. And maybe he, said, okay, we got to brighten this up a little bit, or we got to take this down, or we got to do whatever. Or we got to cut this here, put that there. That, I think they're a great team. And I'd love to see them do more movies like John Wick. Mm-hmm. Not just, I don't know if they're involved in the spinoff or whatever, but, together. But regardless, they're a great team. And I think, movies like John Wick, action movies, need to have teams like that, because all the scenes we talked about, there are a lot of cuts, there's a lot of long shots that are perfectly placed, there's a lot of solo shots that are perfectly placed, and then there's times when it would, John Wick was the front person in the shot, but he was a little out of focus, and you could see what was going on in the back. All of that together is just a perfect complement of the cinematography and the editing. Yeah,
there's a great narrative flow that this film does, and I credit that to Nathan Orloff solely for the reason because if you don't have a good narrative flow, it doesn't matter if you have a great screenplay, doesn't matter if your shots look great, doesn't matter. None of that matters.
Nothing.
But if you have a great narrative structure and a great film that's edited together really solidly, then you have a solid film right here.
For sure.
Like this one is, for sure.
Yeah, it had a really, like you said, a good flow to it. Yeah. It didn't feel, what is it, like a 2.5 hour movie?
It clocks in at 169 minutes, and I gotta tell you, for me anyways, watching this movie, it felt maybe about an hour and a half to 2 hours, somewhere around there.
I float around an hour and a half, 2 hours as well. I mean, the first act for me was a little slow.
A little slow.
But once you get into the second, and especially the third act, you're like, this is great. And the third act is actually very, it's a slow pace.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like it.
No.
And again, that's part of the cinematography and the editing.
Right.
It just made it work.
It's a very immersive experience.
Yes.
It really is. And if you think Chapter 3 was immersive, just you wait, because Chapter 4 is going to blow your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you think you think back to John Wick 1 and 3. 2 had its moments, but it didn't have this flow to it. It had a good structure. The story was okay. I think it probably would have benefited from a final product like 4, but it felt like a John Wick movie, which is obviously what you want.
Right.
And 2 just was the only one that didn't really feel like a John Wick movie. It felt like an action movie.
See, they took a lot of risks with Chapter 2, and I appreciate that for a sequel second outing.
Right.
But I felt that film took too many risks and didn't receive that payoff.
Right. And they figured it out, reeled it in, and said, then they got it where it was needed.
Now, however, this film, Chapter 4, definitely takes a lot of risks, and there's a tremendous amount of payoff, especially when you get to that final duel sequence.
Yes.
So it really just works out, you got to find that balance, and, as a filmmaker, it never hurts to take a risk, but just remember, if you take that risk, be willing to suffer the consequences at the same time.
For sure. I mean, I think just to the fight that he had in the club with, that bit was a big Russian dude there. It's the scene they were playing. They had a poker game with a couple of the characters, and they had this fight sequence where they spilled out into this nightclub, and it gave very John Wick 1 vibes where he fought in the nightclub. So yeah, that just to me was just okay, this does feel like John Wick. It's just a continuation. It doesn't feel like John Wick 2, which was just the risks were there and they really didn't pay off.
Yeah.
So anyway, in that scene, in the nightclub, with the atmosphere, feeling like John Wick 1, the music was there. The music felt like John Wick 1, and they actually used the remix version of, I think it was La Casavania from John Wick 1.
I
which
believe
was
so, yes.
The song from the nightclub in John Wick 1. They kind of remixed it.
It was a good callback.
It was great.
Yeah.
So, Tyler Bates, John J. Richard, responsible for the music.
Yep.
I think they've done all of them. I think.
I believe Tyler Bates is a credit for all of them. Not sure about
Or
chapter one.
not Richard. Yeah, Tyler Bates is what I meant. They nailed this movie right on the head. They hit the atmosphere. The music was there. It felt, it fit in with the John Wick's soundtrack perfectly. To me, it's not as strong as John Wick 1 or John Wick 3. But the callbacks, like the re-edited version of songs, was great. I liked it a lot.
Also, can confirm both the composers have done all 4 movies. So that's really cool.
So, yeah.
But Tyler Bates, I'm a huge fan of Tyler Bates' work. I mean, this is the guy that has done the score for Sucker Punch, Guardians of the Galaxy, Volume 1 and 2. Unfortunately, he's not doing Volume 3. He's done Watchmen for Zack Snyder, Halloween 2. Even going back to some of his earlier work, he's done Love and a Bullet, Night at the Golden Eagle. I mean, there's just a lot of great music and movies that I personally enjoy that he has scored. So.
And you know what I recognize? It's a lot of, action movies. So,
yes.
He really understands how to, create a really good soundtrack, a good atmosphere in an action movie. Like Sucker Punch was, I don't know if it was World War II or whatever it was, but they were in like trench warfare and they were superheroes.
Yeah.
And he created an awesome atmosphere in that. And obviously Guardians of the Galaxy is probably one of my favorite soundtracks of all time.
Absolutely. And Brian, I think it's really cool that you mentioned atmosphere, because I think you could have a solid piece of music, but if you attach it to a weird scene, it's still not going to flow, and it could really actually suffer the atmosphere from the overall film.
Oh, yeah.
But I think what Tyler Bates has done here is really beautifully antiquate a lot of the score to the images that are on the screen.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think is something that a lot of people really overlook for a film. But I think when you look at a film such as this, where the score can also kind of elevate the atmosphere, that's when you know you have a good score and also a good film.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the moments where they were building tension, the music accompanied that and built the tension. Yeah. I mean, especially in the sequences like the final duel, like when he was trying to get to the final duel. Mm-hmm. That's another thing we didn't talk about in the cinematography and the editing, was the fight scene on the staircase.
Oh, yes.
I mean,
my God. How did we miss that?
I don't know. I mean, that was shot beautifully, edited beautifully, and the music was there.
Yeah.
It was such a well put together sequence. Like, there's a point where he's like almost to the top, and then he gets kicked all the way down, and the camera work on that was fantastic.
Oh my God, yeah, they just like kind of follow John Wick. It was really
and
cool.
He fell down probably like 10 flights of stairs.
Yeah.
And the camera, you're watching it, and you're like, I didn't know there was this many ways to watch a guy fall down the stairs.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And again, there's just this immersion that happens. And also you can really tell, again, the screenwriters know exactly the arc they want to tell. This whole redemption, I just want to get done and retire arc.
Yep.
It's amazing how many times they just kind of make this arc come full circle, and you're just experiencing almost like the pain that John Wick is experiencing in these movies. And I think that is something that cannot be undersold and unstated, how amazing that they craft this each and every single time.
I mean, in terms of like what you said, the pain that you feel with John Wick, I think this is the second best behind the first one in terms of that portrayal. Mm-hmm. I mean, John Wick 1, you really felt the pain that he was feeling, like, with his wife's death and then the dog and all that. And this one, I think, is the second to that. Yeah. And then you go down. But yeah, I mean, it was
right. I mean, obviously with the first film, you have to make sure you set up the world and set up the way that John Wick interacts with the environment. And now you're in Chapter 4. You're still with that world building because you have to antiquate all the other different characters and everything like that. But at the same time, you're just along for the John Wick journey. Oh yeah, and that's the best part of this whole damn experience. It
was awesome in John Wick Chapter 4. They're still building the character up until the end of the movie. Yeah, it is amazing.
It's amazing. I definitely feel like these are films that are going to integrate themselves nicely into like a film school curriculum. I think a lot of the up and coming filmmakers of the next generation and the generation after that are going to learn from these movies.
I would take a whole class of cinematography of just that sequence of the top down shot. Yeah, I mean, I would take an entire class for just that. Because it was that good.
Like, it's so good of a sequence that I legitimately can't wait for this movie to come out on, like, streaming or, like, actually buy the Blu-ray disc if anybody still buys those. Just so I can sit there and, like, dissect this sequence way more.
Yeah. It was amazing.
Because, like, I want to understand exactly how this was shot and how much this elevates the film.
I'd like to see the behind the scenes of them showing how they shot it.
Absolutely. I'm telling you though, Brian, it has to be the fact that they tried it with the Steadicam and they were like, this doesn't work.
Yeah. I mean, I could see how you could do it, but I don't know if it would have that same effect as that top down, and I'm glad they went with the top down because it was amazing. I mean, that's literally the thing we've talked most about already. So,
and it's just so different from all the other action sequences in the film, and also the franchise, frankly, for that matter. And I think that's what makes it stand out.
It was a new shot for the franchise, and when you're 4 movies deep, you're like, okay, we need something different. And sure enough, you got that.
Right.
You know, you got the stair sequence, which was a new sequence.
Right.
It's awesome.
You can't do the same thing over and over again. People are just going to get so antiquated with everything. They're just going to be like, all right, I'm good.
Exactly.
That's kind of the criticism I have for a lot of these different franchises, but,
I digress. All right, so now that we got through the crew, now let's talk about the lead man, the director.
Absolutely. And Brian, who is the director in this film again?
Chad Stahelski.
You got it, man.
I know. The confidence level.
You had to take a second to think about it, and I understand.
Nailed it.
Anyways, so this guy has done John Wick Chapter 2, Parabellum as well, and this one as well. He's going to do Ballerina. But there's 2 other films that he's just like produced on the side, Bruised and Day Shift. So his real claim to fame is the John Wick franchise.
Right. This is
pretty cool.
This is his holy grail.
Yeah. He's only done second unit director for Captain America Civil War and the Birds of Prey and the Fabulous... Nope, that's not the name of the movie. Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn, also known as Birds of Prey.
Oh, okay. Never seen it, so I couldn't tell you.
Don't worry about it. It wasn't that great.
If I can't say the name in one breath, I don't want to see it. So, anyway, let's talk about this film. It was great. He did a great job at, keeping in the John Wick mindset of directing and keeping everything feeling like John Wick should.
Yeah. I mean, I got to credit Chad here because each and every successive time he manages to pull together everything beautifully and create a wonderful package.
With a superstar cast.
Absolutely.
I mean, you have a superstar cast here, and this is something we talk about on our awards podcast, which if you haven't listened to, you should. What are you doing? It's just a good director can, make good film, whatever. But a great director can take an amazing cast and, just direct them.
Right.
And say, yes, you're Keanu Reeves, but this is what I need you to do. This shot will look better. And I feel like, there's obviously a level of respect between Keanu Reeves, Lawrence Fishburne, Chad, all of them.
Right.
And that shows itself on the screen and allows Chad to be probably, in my opinion, one of the best, at least, action movie directors right now.
If not one of the best. I'm curious to see what he does post Ballerina and the John Wick franchise.
Yes, once he's done with John Wick, it'd be interesting to see where he goes.
Right. The other thing I would mention too, Brian, is that a great director always has a vision in mind. And I think time after time again, Chad has successfully nailed this vision.
Right.
And I think that's what makes a lot of directors successful. Like, I was just talking the other day with another friend of mine about Francis Ford Coppola doing The Outsiders and Rumblefish, eventually working his way to the Godfather trilogy.
Yep.
And I think that right there is a director. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Rumblefish or not, but if you haven't, it's a film that was definitely experimental for the time. They shot it completely all in black and white, and it really just looks beautiful. It really stands this time. Like, if you want to know how to make a great film and learn cinematography, this is a film to learn it from. This is a film to really study and learn it from. It's just really well put together. And again, I got to credit Francis Ford Coppola because, without him on that movie, I don't think it would have come together as well as it did.
Right. And who knows? Maybe Chad is responsible for our top-down shot that we love so much. Who knows?
Could be.
Again, that'd be something that once we see the behind the scenes and kind of get a better idea, I'd be interested to see. Probably going to be a director's cut of this.
I would imagine so.
Because I feel like there's no way that they don't have more footage that could be used. I feel like there's hours of footage. There has to be.
I feel like I read somewhere the assembly cut of this film was like 4 hours and 15 minutes, but I'm not entirely sure if that was this film or a different film.
I'll watch all 4 hours if that's the case.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, I'd be really interested to see the director's cut and, just what Chad wasn't able to include in the theatrical release that he's like, this will benefit the film better, So that's what I got.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with 110% what you just said, because he's a great director, and if you want to learn how to direct, these are some movies you can check out. This film, Rumblefish, Star Wars The Last Jedi. Absolutely. Love Ryan Johnson.
Yeah, we know you do.
I know. Anyways, we digress here.
We digress. So let's get into the performances of the actors themselves. So obviously, Keanu Reeves plays John Wick.
Absolutely.
I mean, 11 out of 10.
Absolutely. Keanu Reeves is amazing in everything he does.
Keanu Reeves is probably the greatest human being and actor in the history of the planet.
Side note, I don't know if I told you this or not, Brian, but I was listening to a podcast called Smartless, and they had Keanu Reeves on as a guest, right? And apparently, when Keanu Reeves first came to Hollywood, they said, don't go by Keanu, go by, like, your name.
I saw that, yeah.
Like, go by Casey Reeves. So he was in, like, an audition, and they say, Casey. He doesn't get up, so he goes to his agent and goes, yeah, I can't go by Casey.
That'd be awesome. So, Keanu Reeves, if you're listening, we'd love to have you as a guest on our podcast.
Absolutely.
Lawrence Fishburne plays the Bowery King, reprises his role. I mean, Lawrence Fishburne is amazing. Yeah, I mean, he's so good in that role.
Yeah. I've never seen a bad Lawrence Fishburne performance, except for probably Man of Steel.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a mailed-in performance, but not here, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
But then again, in this film, he's only in there for probably like 5 minutes at most.
Yeah, he's never really been like a major role in the John Wick. Like, he's always had like cameos at the end of like I think 1 and 2.
Yeah.
I think you said Man of Steel. I would just like to say he was not great in Ant-Man and the Wasp either. But then again, that was a terrible movie altogether.
Thanks. Yeah. Ant-Man, the first one, is definitely the best of that franchise, and that's me without even seeing Quantumania. So
yeah, I haven't seen that either. But yeah, he's for the little amount of screen time he has in this, I feel like Lawrence Fishburne nails it.
Yeah, so. He always does, no matter what.
Oh yeah. So Ian McShane, plays Winston.
Absolutely.
I enjoyed him in this role.
Yeah.
So
he's always amazing.
He's always amazing. You can't go wrong with Ian McShane.
Yeah.
And you can't talk about Winston without talking about Lance Reddick's character.
Absolutely.
Sharon.
Absolutely. And also rest in peace to Lance Reddick.
Absolutely.
That was such a terrible loss.
This is, I believe, is going to be his last role.
Yeah.
Obviously. I don't think he filmed anything between his, this and his death. So it was a really good swan song.
Actually, can confirm he has a cameo appearance supposedly in the spinoff.
Okay.
So that will be interesting.
That'd be good. So now that they have time to kind of sit there and maybe edit some stuff together, it'd be interesting to see what they do in terms of a tribute for that.
Correct.
But yeah, I enjoyed both of their, Lance and Ian McShane's performance were fantastic.
Yep.
And throughout the series, they have just been great, acting partners. They've played off on each other, so well in their roles. So I enjoyed it.
Hey, by the way, Ian McShane here, I forgot that he was Captain Hook in Shrek the Third.
He was.
I completely forgot about that until I saw this movie and I go, I have newfound respect for Shrek the Third now.
Shrek the Third is pretty good.
Yeah.
And then our villain for the film, played by Bill Skarsgård, the Marquis.
Yeah. Bill Skarsgård, man, I tell you, he's definitely probably like the modern day method actor. Yeah,
he's good. He reminds me, especially, maybe not so much in this role, but like just the way he kind of like his looks remind me of like young Anthony Hopkins, like Silence of the Lambs Hopkins.
I was thinking the exact same thing. Yeah. When I watched this movie, I'm like, this is totally a young Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah. I mean, even the face kind of looks like a young Anthony Hopkins. And so I'd say his performance in this film was amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen his performances in It Chapter 2. I know you don't like horror movies, so I'm sure you probably haven't seen those, but you might have seen clips on the internet.
I saw the original It. But I know he wasn't in it.
Yeah.
But I saw trailers and I mean I don't know. But yeah.
But I just think that
he has a good look. From all the screenshots and trailers I saw, he looked terrifying.
Yeah.
Which is obviously what you want. So
right.
Awesome, man.
But I just think that Bill Skarsgård really has a knack for understanding the role and making sure that he gives it 110%.
Oh yeah, like you can tell he does the research.
Oh yeah,
he probably reads the script 100 times.
Yeah,
knows his character. He's on he's on set and he knows exactly what lines to deliver, how he's going to deliver them, and he probably even thinks about his facial expressions. How
right?
How is this going to look if I do that? And it shows.
Yeah,
the scenes that he's in with Keanu Reeves, he almost steals the scene.
Yeah,
honestly,
which is hard to do from Keanu.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah. But I just think Bill Skarsgård definitely is one of the best at the game. And I think that's something that's probably understated.
Oh, yeah. He definitely, I don't think he's going to get enough credit for this film as he should.
No.
This film specifically. And, to his credit, Skarsgård had a great partner in scenes. We got a lot of scenes with him and Donnie Yen.
Mm-hmm.
Donnie Yen played Kane. Amazing performance by Donnie Yen. And again, him and Skarsgård really, I thought, were just amazing. The way that they, acted with each other in these scenes. And I haven't seen a bad Donnie Yen movie.
I mean, I love the IP Man film series. It's amazing.
Yeah, It Man is great, especially, like the first two are just out of this world.
Actually, I think the only, not necessarily bad, but like subpar Donnie Yen movie I've seen is probably Rogue One. But I don't credit Donnie Yen for that. I think it's just more so just the overall vibe of the film.
Right, his performance was pretty good.
Yeah.
It's just, again, it's that's a discussion for another day with
Absolutely.
Star Wars and poor writing, but Donnie Yen's performance in that film is consistent with his other films, in which he is amazing.
Absolutely.
He nails it. And then you have, sorry if I pronounced this wrong, Hiroyuki Sanada. He plays Shimatsu. Gonna go with that?
Shimatsu.
The owner of I think it's the Tokyo Continental, is essentially what it is. And, boy, he was really good. He was only in maybe 5 or 6 scenes. He did have a scene with Donnie Yen.
Mm-hmm.
Really enjoyed that scene.
Absolutely.
Absolutely fantastic.
And then remember, he was also in Bullet Train. He played the Elder at the very end of that film.
Which was amazing.
Absolutely.
Bullet Train was awesome. His performance in that was great, too.
I think Bullet Train was probably the big surprise last year. Like, I wasn't sure what to expect from that movie.
Yeah. We went into Bullet Train kind of like, what are we going to expect? And we got a good film out of it.
Actually, no, I take that back. It's the second biggest surprise. The first big surprise,
Father Stew.
All right.
Oh, okay.
I was going to say Terrifier 2, but yeah. Father Stew, yeah, that was
Father
surprising.
Stew was the biggest surprise because we did not expect Father Stew.
Listen, hey, if you want to hear more about 2022 in films, go listen to our award show podcast. Anyways, Brian, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
It's all good because I was just going to get into the person that I was calling the wrong name for the entire film, and that's Shamir Anderson, played Tracker. Called him Daryl. Didn't know his name was Tracker. He was good.
Yeah. I mean, he says his name is Tracker.
He says his name is No One.
Well.
And then he says to Keanu Reeves, or John Wick, I'm Tracker. Yeah. And I just didn't retain that. So I called him Daryl from The Office. And it worked. Everybody knew what I was talking about. So, but good performance.
Yeah, even for a small supporting role, I'm interested to see what he does with his career going forward.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't really do a lot. A lot of his scenes were like watching John Wick and intervening every now and then. But a lot of his, like, great scenes were alongside of the dog, the Belgian Malinois.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was amazing scenes with the dog. And that's something, again, the John Wick, series have always done well, is like the performances of the dogs that they have is amazing.
Right. And by the way, Shamir Anderson, he's only 31 years of age.
He's got a long career ahead
Absolutely.
of him.
So very excited to see what he does next going forward.
I'd be perfectly cool with like a Tracker or Daryl series. You know what I mean? Like either a spin-off or a mini-series or something. Because the way that they set up his character, it'd be pretty interesting.
I have a good feeling that they're envisioning a lot of these spin-off films are going to involve some of these characters that they've had over the course of the various films.
I've heard rumblings of Donnie Yen's character getting one. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean the way that they ended the film kind of hints there's a future for other characters, which is nice. You always want that, especially if it's the end of something and people want more. It's always nice to say, well, maybe this will happen with this character since they're the last person you saw or whatever.
Right.
So, who knows? But yeah, in terms of performances of all the actors, not a bad performance from anybody. Even the extras were amazing. Like the people just they were there, they got shot, they died. Great, good job.
So, moving on.
So I guess all that said, our final rating.
Yeah.
So Colin, what was your final rating for John Wick Chapter 4?
All right, so I'm gonna give John Wick Chapter 4 a solid 9.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is because this is my hierarchy of the John Wick franchise. Start at the top, you have the original John Wick. That's a solid 9.5 for me.
Okay.
John Wick Chapter 3 Parabellum, solid 9.25. Chapter 4 sitting at that 9. And then John Wick Chapter 2 sitting at a solid 7.5.
Okay.
It really, Chapter 2 just doesn't do it for me. So, I mean, they're all really close together, but I just really think they nailed it with 1 and 3.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, for me, I gave John Wick 4 a 9.4 out of 10. So my hierarchy of the John Wicks is John Wick 1 at a 9.8, John Wick 2 at a 9.6, John Wick 4 at a 9.4, and John Wick 3 at an 8.7. Or John Wick 2 at an 8.7. So all the 1, 3, and 4 are all separated by 0.2.
Yeah.
And then unfortunately John Wick 2 took a dive, but hey, it's still an 8.7, so it's still not a bad movie.
Right. I mean, as we were saying, you got to take the risk to get the reward. So
right.
You know,
the risk wasn't worth the reward in 2, but 1, 3, and 4 it was.
I mean, that's what this franchise does. The franchise just takes risks overall. So
yep,
is what it is.
And you got to give props to Keanu Reeves for learning all the gun fu and the gun training courses he would run through the speed shooting challenges and stuff. He really, you could tell Keanu Reeves likes and loves this character in the role of John Wick.
Right. I mean, that's the other thing too, is that like the dedication on Keanu's part is what really makes this film realistic, and you really believe in John Wick's character.
Right. And that was my biggest problem with the last Matrix movie with him, is that he acted it almost like it was a John Wick film. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Right.
It felt like John Wick with superpowers is my exact reaction.
But could they have been doing that because of Keanu Reeves' recent success in John Wick?
Yep, absolutely.
So, there you go.
And it could have just been, Keanu Reeves going, you want me to act like Neo? They're like, no, we want you to be John Wick Neo. And he was like...
Shout out to that, Brian. That's a good description.
Exactly. So on that note, that wraps it up for John Wick Chapter 4.
Yeah, folks, you can always email us at allstarsentertainment18@gmail.com. That's allstarsentertainment18@gmail.com. Talk movies, give us anything you want us to review. And, we'll take care of that for you.
We'll take care of it. To the person that requested a review of WrestleMania, we may have something brewing for you. So we hear you.
Yeah.
We're working on it. We're working on a format that will work. But it is in the works.
It's a lot of matches. That's the real problem.
It's a lot of matches, and there's some that we skipped. But hey, we'll
talk about that.
We'll figure it out, and we'll get it uploaded for you.
Absolutely. Well, as always, this is the All Stars Entertainment Podcast, and I am Colin.
I'm Brian.
And we'll see ya on the next one.